So I came to COA 4 years ago from a public high school in Connecticut, and after my 4 years at high school, I left with a strong skill set in chemistry, but this kind of passion and desire to influence the world and affect it through sustainable energy adoption. And so I came to COA kind of thinking that I would meld the two together. And I started out working actually heavily with Ryan Bolden in the chemistry lab, and I got to design and build my own organic photovoltaic. And then at the same time, I was working with Anna Demio doing more community-based renewable energy projects kind of directly in the community. And so halfway through my time here, I kind of veered more towards the side of renewable energy in the community, and I got the opportunity to work with MDI Clean Energy Partners, which is partially founded by Steve Katona, former COA president, and then also got to go to Samsø, Denmark's renewable energy island, and intern there, and was part of the Monster course. And so today I'm going to talk to you about my senior project, though, which was a feasibility assessment of the framework. The energy framework was passed 2 years ago by the Campus Committee of Sustainability, and it sets finite goals for reaching 100% fossil fuel-free operations on campus by 2050. My senior project had a lot of steps. The first step was to go out and collect and organize all the baseline data that existed in multiple different locations and bring it all into one central database. Once I had all that data, I can go and calculate and quantify the targets that we set in the framework. So if we're going to reduce total fossil fuel use per student per year by 10% by 2020, what value is that, and is it feasible for us to reach that goal? Next, I researched and investigated the solutions that made the most sense for reaching those goals. I then designed how we were going to go about those, how we were going to go about reaching those goals. When are we going to replace certain systems? When are we going to do solar installs, et cetera? And then I put those into a timeline, and then once I had them in a timeline, I can evaluate each project separately, add them together, and see whether we reached our goals when we said we were going to. So it's a big, fancy math model. So here's an example of the first step in my senior project. I created this infographic in graphic design with Drew Colbert. This shows COA's baseline energy use. So you see here on this axis, we have the fuel, the sector here at COA, the energy sector. So 70% of our energy is used for heating, 25% electricity, 5% transport. Within that energy use, 33% is carbon neutral, and the other 66% is fossil fuel based. And then within those sections, you can see our different fuel sources, the largest being heating fuel, heating oil, number 2. Here's propane, and then we have pellets over here, and then some other small renewables like on-site renewable electricity, and then our 2 electric vehicles. So the approach that I laid out after going through my research and drawing from my experiences from Samsø, the first thing I did is I basically set the difficult pieces towards the end. Rather than addressing things like transportation, cooking fuel, and island operations, towards the beginning, we would push those to the end of the transition, which in this case is 2040 to 2050, to allow for technology to mature, for us to make a better informed decision on that. Heating, I did an inventory of all the heating systems on campus so that I could create a timeline of when those are realistically going to fail, so 30 years after their manufacture date. And then I also said that heating spaces that are heated, large heating spaces will be replaced with pellets, and then small heating spaces, like a more residential house, would be replaced with something like an electric heat pump. The electricity, to reach our goal of 15% on-site renewable electricity by 2020, that would require another 50 kW install in the next 5 years. So I used that as a benchmark, and I said that we would do another 50 kW every 5 years until the college has developed all average to optimal sites on campus that are deemed suitable. And I also did a solar potential analysis for the campus to give some idea of what that would look like. And then energy efficiency projects would include one thermal electrical efficiency project, like an insulation replacing windows, et cetera, something that would reduce the thermal load of a building, as well as an electrical efficiency project, like replacing the lights. All right, so now I knew how I was going to approach it. I went out and I laid it into a timeline, another infographic I made with graphic design. The green projects are the energy efficiency projects, 1 a year. The yellow blocks are the 50 kW installs every 5 years. You can see where the heating system replacements fall along the timeline. Some are bigger than others. And then the purple blocks are the transportation at the end. So now that I had those all lined out, I can go in and quantify it. So if, for example, if Peach House has a heating oil #2 boiler, how much energy does that use? How much fossil fuels are we using for that boiler? If we replace that with an electric heat pump, how many BTUs of energy are we shifting from fossil fuels to carbon neutrality, and how does that affect the framework? So this is how it affects the framework. You see the red line at the bottom, that's COA's total energy use per student. By the end of our transition, we reached 25% reduction, which is pretty good, a fourth of what we're using now. The yellow line is on-site renewable electricity, which goes up stepwise with the 50 kW installs. In between the installs, the value actually goes down because we're replacing heating systems with electric heat, with heat pumps. So the percentage that we're actually getting from renewables would actually decrease, but minimally. And then the other two are fossil fuel use on campus and carbon emissions, which are highly linked, and those just skyrocket with reduction, skyrockets with replacing heating systems. And by the end of our transition, we reached 92% fossil fuel status, which the other 8% is those difficult things that I said in the beginning, the transportation, the cooking fuel, and the island operations. So by the end of this analysis, I came away with suggestions for revising the framework as well as recommendations moving forward, and that's all in my report. Can't go into all of them right now. Maybe if anyone has specific questions about them, I can talk about them. But I think the major thing that I found here is that for the purpose of my analysis, I spread out projects over the 35-year lifespan that was stipulated by the energy framework. That does not mean, however, that I believe that it is only feasible in order to reach our goals in that time frame. And I think that it comes down to the funding and the way that we want to pursue this in the future, and that will allow us to shrink and adjust that time scale as we see fit and as it aligns with our values. So what am I doing now? I finished this project in April, and since then I've been working at a local startup as a business development associate, and we provide services to people who are operating community solar farms in the US. The other day, a community farm proposal for Bar Harbor was actually passed through the town council, which is good news. And so we would provide services to people who operate these farms through an online software platform that kind of manages all their assets for them and just streamlines the entire process so that these types of things can be adopted more readily here in the US. So, and the nature of my work right now is very interdisciplinary. I'm working with software developers, hardware designers, policymakers, business people to kind of create this platform. So thank you for your time, and I open to your questions.